Okay, the next and final lesson in this unit is called equations of circles. So before I give you the equation of a circle that we're going to use, let's look at where it comes from. Okay? The equation of a circle is based on the distance formula and the fact that all points on the circle are equidistant from the center. Okay, that's the definition of a circle. Every point on the circle is the same distance away from the center. Okay, so let's call this point right here, let's call that xy. Okay, this point right here is xy. We have the radius denoted with the r, and the center of a circle is represented by hk. Now that's not universal, but that's how most places refer to the center of a circle, as hk. I'm not exactly sure why h and k are used. I was thinking h stood for horizontal, but I think those letters are just used because they're not used often. So we're going to use h and k for the center of a circle. Okay. So if you think about the distance formula, that's the distance formula right there. Okay. So if we replace the distance with r for the radius, and we replace the x and x2 and x1 with x and h, and replace y2 and y1 with y and k, it gives you this. And then if you square each side, it gives you this. And this is the equation that we're going to need to know. Okay, this bottom one right here. That's what you need to know. It comes from the distance formula. Okay, so formally, here we go. The equation of a circle with center hk and radius r is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. Okay? So that's the formula that you need to know. So, if you think about that, write the standard equation of a circle with that center and that diameter. Now, you can probably go right to the final answer if you want. And if I was doing this on my own, I would just go right to the final answer. But let me write out what we're really doing. Okay, we're really doing x minus 5 squared plus, you're really doing y minus negative 2 squared equals the radius squared. The radius is 7 because the diameter is 14. Okay. Now, you don't have to write that step out, but I'm just doing it just to show you. Okay. It's going to lead to the following. It'll be x minus 5 squared still. We'll change that minus a negative to plus a positive. So y plus 2 squared equals 7 squared, which is 49. And that's the answer. Okay. So basically, if I were to bottom line this, is we take the opposite sign. So there's a 5 there, so I do minus 5 there. Okay, there's a negative 2 there, so I do plus 2 there. And then the diameter is 14, so that means the radius is 7. So 7 squared is 49. Okay. Okay. Again, the reason why you change the signs from 5 to negative 5 and from negative 2 to positive 2 is because of the formula is subtraction. See, subtraction, subtraction. So that's why you change the signs. Okay. Example 2. Okay, so we're going to have x minus negative 2 squared. Again, you probably don't have to write that. I'll just do it for now, but you can go right to x plus 2 if you want. X plus 2 squared. And then you have y minus negative 1 squared. Again, same thing. You can go right to y plus 1 if you know that. Okay, I would do that if I was doing this, but I'll just write out all the steps in the notes. It's going to equal the radius squared. Okay, so the radius is the square root of 5. So it's going to be the square root of 5 squared. Okay, so in the next step, I'll do x plus 2 squared. And y plus 1 squared. That sign is always subtraction. That sign is always addition. And hopefully you remember this. The square root of 5 squared is 5. Square rooting and squaring are inverses. It's like saying, what's 10 plus 3 minus 3? It's 10. So I'd say the first two examples were easy ones because you were given the center and either the radius or the diameter, so those weren't bad. This next one is tricky. Write the standard equation of a circle with center 1, -3 that passes through the point 2, 2. Okay? So basically what we're going to do is we're going to use the distance formula. Okay? I'll copy the distance formula right here. x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay? You have the center, so that part is easy, but you need to find the radius. To find the radius, use the distance formula. Okay? Now, instead of writing d for distance, I'm just going to use r for radius. Okay? x2 minus x1. So I'll do 2 minus 1. Plus y2 minus y1, so I'll do 2 minus -3. You just have to go slow. Okay, and be careful. I'll make this plus a positive 3. So I'm going to have 1 squared plus 5 squared. So 1 plus 25 is 26. Now we'll go back into the formula. Okay. So x, and again, you might be able to, you can probably skip these steps. I'll do x, the center is 1, -3. So I'll do x minus 1 squared plus y minus -3 squared equals the radius squared. Let's clean that up. X minus 1 squared is good. Let's make that y plus 3 squared. So again, opposite signs. You can just go to that right away if you want. 1, so -1, -3, so positive 3. And the square root of 26 squared is 26. All right. Next example. Graph the circle modeled by the equation x minus 4 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 25. So before I even graph it, let's figure out what the center and radius are. Okay? The center is going to be, take the opposite sign, 4, -1. Always take the opposite sign. So the opposite sign of that will be 4, and the opposite sign of that will be -1. The radius is going to equal the square root of 25, not 25, the square root of 25, which equals 5. Okay? So now how do you graph that? First, you plot the center. Okay, first plot the center, 4, -1. The radius is 5. So what I'm going to do is, from the center, I'm going to count up 5, and I'll put a dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. because the radius is 5. Then I'll count right 5 and put a dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's count down 5 and put a dot. And then left 5. Put a dot. And now you're going to draw a circle. Just do your best to sketch it. I'm going to use a compass because I have that in front of me. I'm going to do it with a compass. But you can just try your best. Okay. Try to connect it as best as you can. That looks good. Okay, that looks pretty good. So that's good enough right there. Okay. Again, make sure you change the sign. So -4 became +4. 1 became -1. Make sure you take the square root of that. I mean, obviously you cannot fit 25 for radius on this graph, but suppose it was a smaller number, you might accidentally do that. But you take the square root of that for the radius, okay? Number 5, write the standard equation of the circle below. So this circle has a center at 0, 0, okay? Jot that down first. And the radius is 1, 2, 3. Okay. So when I write my equation, I guess you can think of it like x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared, but you don't have to write the minus 0. So I'm just going to go right to this. I'm going to say x squared plus y squared equals 3 squared. And you're going to make that 9. So you can skip that first step if you want and just go right to 9. Okay, because I'm not going to do x minus 0, that doesn't do anything. I'm not going to do y minus 0, that doesn't do anything. So just x squared plus y squared equals 3 squared, which was 9. Okay. Next problem has a same directions. The center is -3, 2. I mean -2, 3. Okay. And the radius is 1, 2, 3, 4. The radius is 4. Okay. So we have x plus 2 squared. I guess I'll be consistent. I'll do the same thing I've been doing. You can go right to x plus 2 if you want. I won't do that. I'll just write out each step in case you want to see me do it. Again, that first step is not necessary to write. You can go right to the final answer, and you probably should at this point. X plus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 16. So again, you change the sign. -2 became +2. 3 became -3. And over here, this is the radius squared. So 4 squared is 16. Okay. So up until now, we've been talking about the standard form. Okay, the standard form or the standard equation of a circle so far. Okay. There's also something called the general form. Okay. So sometimes the equation of a circle may be written in the general form: x squared plus y squared plus dx plus ey plus f equals 0, okay, where d, e, and f are constants. To convert from general form to standard form, we are going to do what's called completing the square. So some of you may remember this from Algebra 1, some of you may not, okay? Let me just take an expression. Let's say I have x squared plus 6x. And the question is, what number do I have to add to that to get a perfect square? Okay, so think about it like this. Let's say this is x squared. Let's say add 6 x's to it. Say that's an x, that's an x, that's an x, 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 x. The question is, what do I have to add to make a perfect square? Okay, let's look at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have to add 9 to get a perfect square. Okay, you get that number 9 algebraically by taking this number right here. In this case, it's 6. Okay. You take this number here, 6. You divide it by 2. You always divide it by 2. That gives you 3. And then you take that 3 and you always square it, and that gives you 9. Okay, that's where the 9 came from. You take this number right here, you divide it by 2, always divide it by 2, and whatever number you get, you always square it to get 9. Okay, that's how you complete the square. Okay. So here's how we're going to do this problem. Complete the square. Well, just to finish this one up, just to talk about this one some more. If I were to factor this, if I were to write it as a perfect square, it would be x plus 3 squared. Okay? You get that by either factoring this, what two numbers multiply to 9 and add to 6, so 3 and 3, or it's whatever that number is, with the sign in front of it. So it's positive 3. That's why it's x plus 3 squared. Now let's get to the actual examples for today's lesson. Okay. Example 7, complete the square for this equation, which is the general form. Write an equation for it in standard form, then state the center and the radius. So here's how we're going to do it. Start by writing all the x's next to each other. Okay. Sometimes they're already written next to each other, sometimes they're not. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write the x squared minus 8x. I guess I'll do this in a different color. Then I'm going to put plus blank. After the x term, the linear term, whatever you have for x, put a plus blank. And then you're going to put the y squared and then the 10y next. Okay, you're going to put all the y's next. Again, always after the linear terms, you're going to put plus blank. And you're going to bring the constant over to the other side of the equation. So negative 16. Okay, but the reason why I have you put the plus blanks is so that way you remember to add them to the other side of the equation also. Okay, whatever you add to one side, you also have to add to the other. Okay, so now we have to complete the square. So maybe do this off to the side somewhere. Okay, we take whatever the x is and we divide it by 2 and then we square it. Okay, so whatever the number is before the x, in this case it's a negative 8. We take that negative 8, divide it by 2, we get negative 4. And then you take that negative 4 and you square it, and that's always going to give you a positive number. Okay, even if it was negative, when you square it, it becomes a positive number. So in this case, it becomes positive 16. So that 16 is the number I'm going to use to complete the square. I'm going to add 16 on each side of the equation. Plus 16, plus 16. Okay, that's why I have you put the plus blank, so you know to add it to each side. And remember, you put the plus blanks after the linear term. So after whatever you have for x and after whatever you have for y. Sometimes you might not have a linear term, so pretend that, let's see if I Pretend that this term was not here. Then you would not have to do it for the x, you would only have to do it for the y, okay? All right, we took care of the x, now let's take care of the y, okay? Take whatever number is before the y, in this case it's negative 10, and we're going to work off of that, okay? Take the negative 10, divide it by 2, you always divide it by 2, that gives you negative 5. Take that negative 5 and square it to get 25. And that 25 is a number that you're going to use to complete the square. So plus 25, plus 25. Now what you're going to do is you're going to factor the left, okay? This is going to become something squared because it's called completing the square. It should lead to something squared, right? Completing the square, okay? So you can either factor it by thinking to yourself, what two numbers multiply to 16 and add to negative 4? Okay? So did I say that right? I meant to say what two numbers multiply to 16 and add to negative 8. I don't remember if I said that. What two numbers multiply to 16 and add to negative 8? Okay, it's going to be negative 4 and negative 4. So you rewrite it as x minus 4 squared. The shortcut, it's whatever number that is. Okay, with the sign in front of it. So it's negative 4 there, so it's negative 4 there. Now we're going to factor these three. It should be something squared. It's called completing the square. So what two numbers multiply to 25 and add to negative 10? Negative 5 and negative 5. Again, the shortcut, it's whatever that number is. On the right, add up those three numbers together. Negative 16 plus 16 is 0, plus 25 equals 25. So that's my standard form of the equation of the circle, and it has a center of 4, 5. Okay, so the center is 4, 5. Opposite signs, and the radius equals the square root of 25, which equals 5. Okay, let's do one more like that. Okay, you want to put the x's next to each other. So this time the x's are not next to each other, but let's write them next to each other. So x squared plus 2x. Put a plus blank right there, so we complete the square after. Then we'll put the y's next to each other. So y squared minus 10y. After the linear term, the y, you're going to put plus blank. Bring the constant over to the other side of the equation, so I'm going to say equals 55, positive 55. And I got to do plus blank, because whatever I add to one side, I also have to add to the other side. All right, let's complete the square and let's see what we get. Take whatever the number is before x, in this case it's 2. You always divide it by 2. That equals 1. And you always square that number. So 1 squared equals 1. Not very exciting, but that's the answer. So you're going to add 1 to each side of the equation. Okay? Add 1. Plus 1, plus 1. Now let's do completing the square for the y's. We got negative 10 again. You might remember this already from last time. So the last one was also negative 10. But same process. Negative 10 divided by 2 equals negative 5. Negative 5 squared equals 25. Plus 25, plus 25. Let's factor these three terms. The x plus 1 squared. Let's factor these three terms. Y minus 5 squared. Equals, on the right, 55 plus 25 is 80, plus 1 is 81. So it means we have a center of negative 1, 5, and the radius equals 9. All right. And that's the end of that lesson, equations of circles, and that's the end of Unit 8.